Have you ever longed for God's presence in a way that it really goes beyond religion? It's something that actually fills your heart. It's something that restores your soul, makes you feel assured that God is actually with you. Well, the closing chapters in Ezekiel answer that longing by showing us that God does not abandon his people. He is the true shepherd. He breathes life into everything that possibly could seem dead, and he promises his presence forever. I'm Pastor Ryan. This is Bible in a Year. We're in Ezekiel. We're going to finish up the book of Ezekiel, chapters 29 through 48 this week. In this video, I want to show you what to look for in the passages that we're reading so that you can lean in, not just read words, but hear God's voice as you read. And if you're enjoying this journey together, maybe you're new to it, hit that subscribe button, like this video, share it with a friend, and let's get ready to dive into what we're going to read this week. There's three powerful sections within these chapters that I want to point out on how God meets us in this deep longing of our hearts for his presence. The first is the good shepherd being promised. In chapter 34, watch for the way that God condemns Israel's leaders for being false shepherds, because they feed and fed themselves, but neglected the flock. But when God makes a promise, he himself is going to be the shepherd to his people. Pay attention to the personal language that's communicated. God, he says things like, I will search for my sheep. I will rescue them. I will bind up the injured. And this matters because it's not just something from the past that God did. It actually points straight to Jesus, the good shepherd who lays down his life for his sheep. So as you read along here, don't just skim through, but rather stop. Let's reflect. Where do you need the shepherd's care in your own life? Because this chapter, it reveals God's presence and how we can join in that presence because he's our shepherd. He's close to those he leads. We're going to read a few chapters later, the Valley of Dry Bones, chapter 37. God gives Ezekiel a vision of a valley filled with dry bones. He tells us exactly what that means in verse 11. Son of man, these bones are the whole house of Israel. Israel is scattered in the exile. They looked like a dead nation, but God promised he would breathe his spirit into them and restore them to their land. Now, historically, this pointed to Israel's return from Babylon. Prophetically, we see this vision also pointing to Israel's final restoration in the last days when they will return, or I should say, go to Jesus, see him, look to him, receive him as their Messiah. And while this prophecy is first about Israel, let us know that it still reveals the heart of God for us today. If he could resurrect a nation that seemed hopeless, he could bring life into these dead places of our life. His spirit has power over every situation that we have and occurs in our lives. So just know that our circumstances are not beyond his reach. And lastly here, the new temple and the Lord's presence. This book, it ends with this really extended vision of a new temple, a river flowing out of that temple, bringing life, and the land being restored. And there's a lot of detail, a lot of imagery here, but the ending verse of this book is simple, it's breathtaking. It says, the name of the city from that time on shall be the Lord is there. So when you read, focus not just on the architecture, the beauty, but what it actually means. God's glory is back. His presence is here, which had departed in earlier chapters. It's now restored. And this points forward, not just to Israel returning, but to Christ, a new creation where God will dwell with his people forever. And the longing here for God's presence is answered by his permanent dwelling. These three moments, the shepherd, the dry bones, the temple, they show us God's presence in a very personal and powerful and permanent way. But Ezekiel also gives a supernatural lens in which to read through this week. So when we read about Gog and Magog in 37 and 38, it's easy to only see them as these geopolitical enemies of Israel. But the supernatural worldview invites us to look a lot deeper, because these names represent not only hostile nations, but the spiritual rebellion that is behind them. See, the ancient mindset, every nation had spiritual powers or gods that stood behind it. Go reference Deuteronomy 32 for that. Gog then becomes a symbol of the ultimate enemy of God's people, an earthly ruler backed by this spiritual opposition. From this lens, Ezekiel's prophecy is not just about a war between nations. It's about God's decisive victory over both human and spiritual rebellion. That's why Revelation 20 reuses Gog and Magog to describe the final global uprising against God before his eternal kingdom is fully established. So reading it this way keeps us from reducing this passage to just politics or history. It points to the bigger story, which is that God will one day defeat every power, seen and unseen, that opposes him. So as you read this week, don't just ask what nations are involved in this. Ask, what does this show me about the spiritual war behind all of history and the ultimate triumph of Christ? And this entire reading for this week, what does it mean for us today? Well, the longing for God's presence is answered in three ways as we read. He shepherds us, yes. He shepherds us personally, I would say, actually. His Spirit's with us, and his presence will one day fill this earth forever. As you read these chapters this week, don't just look for the facts. Make sure you look for God in all of it. Where do you need his shepherding? Where do you need his Spirit to breathe life and revive you? Where do you need hope that his presence is with you and he's never going to leave you? I pray that the Lord blesses you this week as you read, that he shepherds you, he guides you through the scriptures, and your life is transformed with every single word that you read.